Hello, next instalment of There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. Chapter 40. Bradley's mother took his temperature and told him he was normal. I am not, he argued. He's not normal, Claudia agreed. He's bizarre. Bradley felt as if his stomach were tied in a knot. Every time he thought about Carla, he felt the knot pull tighter. I hate her, he repeated as he slowly walked to school. When he said he hated her, the knot in his stomach loosened just a little bit. He sat at his desk in the back of Mrs. Ebble's classroom. Last seat, last row. Hi, Bradley, said Jeff, sitting down next to him. Where were you yesterday? Were you sick? He didn't answer. Jeff wasn't his friend. He didn't have any friends. Bradley, called Mrs. Ebble, will you come here, please? He dragged his feet to her desk. I was sick yesterday, he told her. Call my mother if you don't believe me. Mrs. Abel waved that away. I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed your book report, she said. It made me want to read the book. Huh? Miss Davies gave it to me yesterday, Mrs. Ebble told him. She explained how she accidentally ripped it. He stared at her, amazed. Then he noticed his book report, taped together, lying on Mrs. Ebble's desk. At the very top, in red ink, was the word excellent. I gave you a gold star, said Mrs. Ebble. He picked up his book report and ran back to his desk. There it was, next to the name Bradley Chalkers, a gold star. He slowly sat down as he stared at it. It seemed to shine brighter than all the other stars. The knot in his stomach jerked tight, and he had to look away. The star reminded him of Carla. She's such a liar, he thought. She said she accidentally tore it up, when I was the one who did it. I hate her. He shoved his book report in the back of his desk. The knot loosened. He walked all recess. The other boys called to him from the basketball court, but he pretended not to hear them. He just kept walking. Okay, he decided. I'll go see her at lunch. I'll just say goodbye to her. That's all. Everyone was looking for you to play basketball, Jeff said when he returned to class. I told him you were still sick from yesterday. I'm not sick, said Bradley. I'm normal. When the bell rang for lunch, he walked to Mrs. Ebble's desk to ask for the hall pass. Yes, Bradley, she said. He couldn't talk. The knot in his stomach was so tight it choked off his vocal cords. He stuck his hands in his pockets and walked outside. He sat in a far corner of the playground. Twice he thought he saw Carla. The first time it was a third-grade girl. The second time it was a tree. His stomach was too knotted to eat anything. I saw Carla, Jeff told him at lunch. I went to her office to say goodbye. She said she'd like to see you. She said she'd wait in her office after school for you just in case you wanted to talk to her. She asked me to tell you that. Bradley closed his eyes until the knot loosened. Don't you want to even say goodbye to her? Jeff asked. He shook his head. He could picture her waiting in her office for him. He'd walk in and she'd say, Hello, Bradley. It's a pleasure to see you today. I appreciate your coming to see me. When the final bell rang, he walked directly home. The knot in his stomach tightened with every step he took. I hate her, I hate her, I hate her. Chapter 41. Let's go, Bradley, his mother said on Saturday morning as she entered his room. We're off to a real barber shop. She said it as if a barber shop was the most wonderful place in the world. In the past, she'd always cut Bradley's hair herself, but this time he'd asked her to go to a real barber shop. That was earlier in the week when they were out buying the birthday present for Colleen. You make my head look like a chili bowl, he'd complained. Now he sadly looked up at his mother and said, I don't want to get my hair cut. You want to look nice for Colleen's birthday party tomorrow, don't you? She asked. You don't want to go looking like a punk rocker. I'm not going to her birthday party, he snapped. I hate her. Bradley's mother left him alone. He heard Carla's voice in his mind. Saturday, I'm going to need someone to help me move all my things out of the office. I would appreciate it very much if you would come and help me. The knot in his stomach tightened. No, I hate you, he said out loud. His father knocked, then came into his room. Bradley, I think we need to talk, he said, man to man. Bradley stood up. Why don't you tell me what's bothering you? Asked his father. Maybe I can help. Bradley didn't want any help. I was very sorry to hear that your counsellor had been transferred to another school, said his father. I know how much you liked her. At first I didn't like the idea of you seeing a counsellor, but I have to get my hair cut, said Bradley. Mum said so. He walked out of his room, leaving his father behind him. His mother drove him to the barber shop. Carla's voice spoke in his mind. We could have lunch together. We can go to a restaurant. The knot pulled tighter. It'll be lots of fun, Carla said, and it would be a great help to me. And tighter. Maybe I'll see you on Saturday, said Carla. I would like that very much. And tighter. You're not Cinderella, and I'm not Prince Charming. And tighter. The knot pulled so tight it broke. "Stop the car," he shouted. "I have to go back." The car swerved. "Don't ever do that again," exclaimed his mother. "We could have had an accident." "I don't believe in accidents. I'm getting sick and tired of your nonsense, Bradley. What's your problem?" "I can't get my hair cut now. I have to go to school." "On Saturday? I'm supposed to see my counsellor. She's waiting to see me. Call the school if you don't believe me." The car stopped in the parking lot in front of the barber shop. "We're here," his mother said sternly. "You're getting your hair cut now." He stepped out of the car and reluctantly followed his mother into the barber shop. It smelt oily, like hair and hair oil and stale bubblegum, all mixed together. All around him, mirrors, reflected mirrors. The place was ugly, and the mirrors reflected the ugliness, multiplying it 100 times back and forth. They seemed to reflect the awful smell, too. He couldn't believe he'd asked his mother to take him to such a place. It was like some kind of horrible dungeon where kids went to be tortured. But worst of all, he had to wait his turn to be tortured. All the barber chairs were occupied. He sat on a torn red couch. "Do you want to read a comic book?" asked his mother. "No, thank you," he answered quietly. Finally, it was his turn. He climbed into a slippery, oily vinyl barber chair. The barber tied a shiny apron tightly around his neck, nearly choking him to death. The barber began by combing his hair. Bradley wondered why he had to comb it if he was going to cut it anyway. At last the barber picked up the scissors and began to cut. But he never cut off a big piece of hair all at once. Instead, he kept snipping little bits of hair off and the same piece of hair over and over again. The whole time Bradley had to stare at himself through the filmy mirror. He gritted his teeth and waited for it to be over. The barber put down the scissors, but then he picked up the comb and started combing again. "I knew I shouldn't have combed it before," Bradley said. "Now we just got to do it again." The barber sprayed some kind of smelly junk on Bradley's head, combed his hair one last time, then unhooked the apron around Bradley's neck. Bradley quickly hopped off the chair before the barber could change his mind. But the barber wasn't through. He made Bradley stand still while he ran a small vacuum cleaner across his neck. When he finished, he offered Bradley a piece of bubble gum. "I hate gum," said Bradley. He never used to hate gum, but after smelling it in the barber shop, he never wanted another piece again. "You'll be the most handsome boy at Colleen's party," his mother said as they walked out. "Can you drive me to school, please?" he asked. She nodded. 10 minutes later, he jumped out the car, ran up the steps in front of the school, and pulled on the double glass doors. They were locked. He pressed his face against the glass and looked inside. Mrs. Kemp, the janitor, was waxing the floors. He pounded on the door until she looked up. Mrs. Kemp scowled at him as she opened the door. "What do you want, Chalkers?" "I have to see Miss Davies," he said. "Miss Davies is gone." He ducked under her arm, which held open the door, and ran into the building. "Chalkers!" she shouted after him. "I'll call the police." He opened the door to Carla's office and stepped inside. Except for the round table and chairs, the room was empty. But in his mind, he heard Carla say, "Hello, Bradley. It's a pleasure to see you today. I appreciate your coming to see me." Tears rolled down his face. He noticed a large manila envelope lying on the table. He picked it up. Bradley Chalkers was written across it in big letters. Under that, in small letters, was the following: